In mid-March of 2020, I've installed this bird feeder outside my window. I've tied it with steel wire to a flagpole bracket that was already there. And I thought I'd try it because I found one really cheap in a DIY store. And then I filled it with barley. But as you can see, the doves had problems getting to the food. They were really struggling. So I just installed this perch for them, made from an old umbrella handle. And the doves really love it now. They can very easily reach the seeds. But as you can see, now they have a new problem. At least one of them started trying to get inside my apartment, and I didn't really know why. I asked around, and people on Facebook told me that perhaps they wanted to get to my plant that you can see there right by the window to build a nest. And to be frank, I think they were right, and I couldn't think of any other reason for why they would do that. But that gave me an idea. So I've started working on this nest support that I'm making from the leg of a hat and coat stand. Here I'm sanding it down. It was pretty grimy and I wanted to lacquer it, and that required a lot of chiseling, which I've done with a cutter. Then I had to drill the holes for the wires that would hold the nest. Here I am priming and then lacquering both the nest support and some other thing that I'm making, which is a support for bee houses for solitary bees, which I'm also mounting to this project, let's call it. And after those were done, I've started working on the nest wireframe, the actual nest support. Here I'm just beginning by tying a piece of wire to a plastic ring, and that's gonna be the start of the entire wireframe. After that, I bought a canvas bag from my local corner store, and I'm just putting it around the wireframe. Then I just tied the nest to the nest support. After that, it was just a matter of mounting it outside, which is a pretty dangerous thing to do. I was very careful, holding tightly to my tools. Here you can also see that I've placed a key in a lock that I've tied to the bottom of the nest. That's to pull on the nest to hold it in place. I also couldn't help to film the outside because that day was beautiful and I had a lot of fun working. I wanted to share that with you. Here you can see how the flagpole bracket is actually mounted on the outside of the building. And here I've taken some stills of the project, how it came along so far. And to be honest with you, I don't like it. It looks like an old diaper. But I'll have to take care of that later. Here I'm marking some bamboo shoots into 17.5 centimeter long sections, which should be more than adequate for the bee houses. The bee houses will be an addition to the larger project of the bird feeder and the bird's nest. They don't really fit in, but I had no other place for them and they shouldn't interfere with each other anyways. After I've marked these sections, I'll be cutting the bamboo using a jigsaw. Now I just need to trim off the loose ends of these bamboo sections. They leave these very sharp bamboo strips at the end that need to be cut off. They'll also look nicer. And now I'm simply drilling a hole through most of them because the bamboo joints are closing off the tubes, so they need to be cleared. Then it's just a matter of mounting it outside. I've done this during the night, which wasn't the best time for filming, but the next day I've captured some shots of how it all looks. And anyways, I decided that I really hated the nest, so I took it down. So for the nest, I had the idea of using some wooden ties that will be mounted on the nest support to be able to better mount the nest and have it not only look better but function better as a nest. So I just had to cut the wooden ties, then drill 4 holes in each of them at their ends, then prime them, lacquer them, and then I just mounted the nest directly to them because it would have been much more difficult to do it on the outside. So I've done that in my room. And then it was much easier to just mount the whole thing on the outside structure. I figured that the nest would need protection from the rain, so I was thinking of making a covering. I had this sheet of masonite, which is a type of hardboard, and I thought it would be perfect. So I started sanding the glossy side, and I didn't really get anywhere, but I tried lacquering it, and as you can see from this video, it really didn't turn out well. The lacquer dripped and covered parts that weren't supposed to be covered, and it just looks blotchy, and I didn't really want to install it outside like that. So I gave it a good sanding down. It was a long and arduous process, and I thought that maybe I could paint over it. Here I'm making a cover for my camera, since I don't want it to get painted over as well. So I tried a spray paint for the masonite board. I had another masonite board which I was gonna use as the cover for the bee houses, and also some washers because I didn't manage to buy any stainless steel washers. I had the screws and I had the nuts, but since I was doing this project during the COVID pandemic, they just were not available to me. So I tried to spray them over. Here I am showing that really didn't turn out well, so I needed new masonite sheets, and I seriously needed to get my hands on some stainless steel washers because the paint just did not stick to them. But I got some new masonite sheets and cut them to size, drilled them, and then I tried spraying them again. I realized that spray paint is not the way to go, since the paint layer is very thin and the fumes clear out in a few hours, and working with it was just not feasible. So I just used a oil-based paint and a brush, and that turned out spectacularly, and I was very pleased with the result. So while working on the hardboard sheets, I found a pigeon nest right outside my apartment building. It had most likely fallen off from an air conditioning unit, and it had no eggs in it, and was probably spent, so I thought it very fortuitous. I took it inside, and it was covered in bird poop, so I thought of sterilizing it, since I didn't want to spread parasites or infections either to me or to the would-be parent birds. So I boiled some water, and then I thought of killing two birds with one stone, so I was also cutting some glass over it using the same boiling water. And at one point I managed to scrape off most of the bird poop and make it smaller, get rid of some of the unnecessary sticks. So, because I took down the nest anyways because I didn't like it, I stripped it of its canvas diaper, because that's what it looked like, and I just pushed the nest inside, making sure that sticks will stick out of the wireframe so it will really hold on. So after all of that was done, I started tying some wire joints to the nest so I could easily tie it to the already existing structure outside. I also had prepared some cat hair from my own cat, so I just stuffed it in there to make it softer. It also had some dried leaves in it. And as a final touch, I just tied a bit of that canvas, and since I didn't think that the nest had any space in it, I just put it on the outside ring of the nest so any eggs wouldn't fall out. And now I'm working on the fourth addition to this project. It's a small bush by the scientific name of Aronia melanocarpa. It's going to provide fruit for the birds and leaves for the leaf cutting bees that I hope will move into my bee houses. You can see that I'm working on a system that will allow me to easily water the plant, and also some plastic coverings that will make water evaporation more difficult, so I'll have to water the plant much less. Now that I had all the necessary components, it was time to mount them all together. Here I'm tying the wrenches to my wrists because wrenches easily come out and I didn't want to lose any of them, but also I didn't want to kill anybody. It would have been very dangerous if they would have fallen on somebody's head downstairs. And here I'm showing that I'll be using stainless steel screws, washers and nuts, so none of them will rust. After taking out all of the wooden ties, I just placed the masonite sheet over them and then put them back on. And here we see a perfect example for why I tied the wrenches to my wrists. This one time a wrench cammed out and it would have fallen down, but I caught it right away. I didn't need to secure my other tools, since only the wrenches, when they came out, cause you to suddenly lose control over them. This is my system for keeping the bird feeder lid locked. It's not very efficient and I've changed it off camera long after the project was done. I will hopefully show you that in a future video. I was lucky enough to get some rain right after I've mounted the main masonite sheet to test it out. And here are the results. I can say that I'm pretty happy with them. After the main masonite sheet was mounted, I tried to mount the second sheet, but it didn't quite fit, so I had to take some measurements and make some changes and then come back. Now, after I've modified the smaller masonite sheet, I'm trying to mount it over the bee houses, but it still doesn't fit, so it needs further adjustments. Here I'm just tying the new nest to the wooden tie wires that were left from the old nest. Anyways, after further modifications, I was finally able to mount the masonite sheet over the bee houses to shield them from rain. A friend of mine wanted to get rid of this plastic Christmas tree, so I took it off his hands. I know I wanted to incorporate the middle section into my project, but exactly how I do it came to me only when I got it outside and I started playing with it. Here I'm just adjusting the branches a little bit for them to look nicer, but also to cover the nest, to make it less conspicuous. Here I have a photograph of my recording setup, where you can see the phone I'm using to record most of the video. So now for the actual final piece of this project, I'm mounting the plant outside. Again, I had no idea how I would mount the plant or where, but I just figured it out as I went along. To be honest, I don't really like the placement of the plant, but at the same time I had no other better place to put it. It needs direct sun and rain. Here you can see that it has a bag over its head, and that's to protect it from the elements while it gets accustomed to the new conditions. I just left it on for a few days. And after all of that, the project is done, and here we even have a dove that came to check out my new setup. The doves came back pretty quickly after I've finished the project, and they seem to be really enjoying it. One day this honeybee took shelter from the rain on my mosquito net, and that made me feel pretty hopeful for the chances of my bee houses. But alas, even though I've finished the project on the start of June of 2020 and I am making this video at the end of August, no bees and no doves have made their nests in my little setup. So most likely I will have to wait for next year, but I will keep everybody posted.